Cohousing information session today. So thank you all for coming. And yeah, we have a few things that we want to let you know about before we start. The first is that we are not developers. So we are citizens. We are hopefully future residents of this development, and we are working together, other citizens, to join us in building our own green neighborhood. We are the founders, Leon and I, so we started this idea through, well, I guess several years of behind the scenes work, and then publicly launched it in September. And since then we've been building the momentum for the project. Today we're going to start with introductions, then tell you about this concept of co-housing. We'll review what the homes and the common amenities could be like, the location, the development process, how we're going to go about this, how you can get involved, and then time for questions and answers. So the presentation itself is no more than an hour, and then leaving time for questions at the end. A few housekeeping things before we start. The washrooms are just in this hallway here. Help yourself to some apples, handouts, and the now Lunenburg County materials are on that table. We have an email sign-up sheet here. If you'd like to get on the mailing list for the project, please make sure you fill that out before you leave. And we're very pleased to be able to offer a really awesome child care experience today at the same time as this information session offered by the South Shore Waldorf School, which is another great reason to think about moving to the South Shore. And I'm going to turn it over now to Caitlin to tell you a couple of things about the school.
Hi, so I am the Enrollment and Development Coordinator at South Shore Waldorf School, and I didn't know I was going to be introducing the South Shore Waldorf School to y'all today. So in the adjacent room we have one of our kindergarten teachers as well as our kindergarten assistant who runs a parent talk program once a week. And we also have our grade 5-6 teacher who will be starting to teach middle school at our school starting next year in there as well, doing an art project. We have a little sign-up sheet to sign in your children, but also if you're interested in more information, we're always looking to grow our community of friends who support the school. We have a lot of wonderful events at the school, and we have a feeling that it's really important to have an intergenerational experience for the children at the school, so we're always looking for grandparents to come, or even if you don't have children, for you to be part of the community. So we have, coming up soon, we're going to have a puppet show and tea at the school, and we'll also have a May Fair where the children will dance around the maypole, and there's lots of activities, live music, things. We have some information set up out there as well as some lesson books and it's actually all from one child, so you can see the progression that she went through from grade 1, including some of her knitting that she did, all the way through high school, and you just sort of see the development of sort of the curriculum over the years. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll just be over there. Is that 2 minutes? Less?
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. And children are welcome to come and go. Adults are welcome to come and go throughout the session. So please don't feel like you have to stay in your seats. And there'll be time after, like I said, our talking part is not the whole time, so you can wander in there after as well. So should we maybe do this a little easier to see?
Nope, this one.
There we go. That's easier to see. Yeah. Great. So this is going to be a brief overview today, and we'll encourage you to dig deeper on our website or by coming to a meeting or talking to us at another time. Moving on.
Okay, so we're going to say a few words about ourselves in a moment, but just to get a sense of who is with us today, we have a little exercise just to see where people are from and what some of your interests are. So this is a little hand-raising activity. So if you'd like to participate, that'd be great. So I'd like to ask if you would raise your hands if the following statements apply to you. Okay, and then we can all look around and see who's raising their hands. So the first one is, if you live in Halifax or close by. Okay, 100%. Fantastic. All right, we know who's here. So I don't have to ask if you came from a 1 hour drive or a 2 hour drive away, because I don't think, oh, yes, all right, one, awesome. 1 hour or 2 hours?
Well, I live in the States.
Okay, all right, that's a little bit more than 1 hour. Awesome, great, glad you could join us. Raise your hand if you wish you could live in a more energy efficient home. That's important to me as well. Raise your hand if you've ever thought about sharing property with friends. Thinking about it a little bit? I'm thinking about it. Raise your hand if you are brand new to this concept of co-housing or intentional community. Okay, thanks for coming out anyway. It's a big idea. If you have wanted to live in an intentional community for a long time, been thinking about it for a long time, it's been percolating. If you wish you could raise your children in a village. If you wish you could have better relationships with your neighbors. And so those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. Those are some of the values that are in our project, and so you may find some inspiration in our project idea. Just before we kick it off, just curious to hear if there's anything in particular that brought people here today. So was there anything that you'd like to share, something that you're particularly interested or excited about that brought you here today? Anybody like to share particular interests? Yes?
I'm interested in living in a multi-generational situation as I age.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yes?
My wife Caitlin and I are about a week away from being parents.
Okay. Very exciting.
Yeah, so we're interested in something that is perhaps in creating a life for our kids that is perhaps different from what we've experienced.
Okay. Awesome. Very well said. Yes?
I have to confess that I probably maybe shouldn't be here because my 6-year-old grandson has been bugging me about filling in the treehouse. I heard something on the radio this morning about
Nice.
tree houses up here. So that's why I'm here, but I'm going to stay anyway.
Okay, please feel welcome. I think it's safe to say there's going to be a treehouse. There better be anyway. So thank you for joining us. Maybe somebody else in your life will feel inspired by it, even if it's not for you. Yes? Did you raise your hand as well?
I was just waving to my daughter.
Okay.
That's basically, I'd like to raise my child, with a village, with other people.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in having a low footprint and doing that through community living.
Okay.
The effectiveness, the value of community living has a lot of values, of course, but the idea that living communally in a way that does the least amount of harm is very appealing.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you for sharing some of your interests. A lot of those have a lot in common with the interests of the people in our group and the people that have come together to create this project. So I'll turn things back over to Kate, and she'll talk a little bit about some of our personal interests in this work.
So for a while, we've been asking ourselves a similar question, like what's on our mind when we think about the housing that we would like to ultimately live in? And for our family, several questions have come up. One of the first ones was, how can we afford to have a home with the environmental technologies that are aligned with the environmental values that we have? Where are the neighborhoods where our children or child can free range? How can we design a home in a neighborhood that makes it easy to walk more, to garden more, to play more, to have more high-quality social interactions face-to-face rather than screen-to-screen? How can we own less but have access to more through sharing and borrowing? How can we collaborate on things like childcare, dropping off at school, meal preparation, garden maintenance, to create space in our busy lives? And where is this proverbial village in which to raise our child? We see it in storybooks all the time, but where is this actually? It doesn't seem to be as common as maybe it once was. So how can we find it? So then we came upon this concept of co-housing, and for us it was kind of this eureka moment of, my gosh, there's a name for this. And people have done it all over the world. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But there's not one in Eastern Canada, so I guess we'll have to start one. And that's how we got to be where we are today. So before we delve into what Treehouse Village is going to be, we want to tell you more about this concept of co-housing. Co-housing is a form of intentional community where the physical architecture, the buildings, the walkways, the gardens, support the social architecture, or the healthy community, the social fabric of the place. Some people also say that it's a small, safe, old-fashioned neighborhood of modern, energy-saving homes where children can play safely, adults can work things out together, elders have neighbors who care, where we all work and play together. Modern co-housing, of course humans have co-lived forever, but this modern concept of co-housing was started by families, specifically some single moms in Denmark in the late 60s. And a couple of young architects from North America, McCammon and Durrett, went over, learned about it, and brought the concept back to North America, and they coined the English phrase co-housing. There are over 160 completed co-housings in the United States, 13 completed in Canada, about twice that forming right now. There are none east of Quebec City, so there's a real, it's coming east, and there are 5 groups in Atlantic Canada talking about it. There aren't any built. There are at least 5 groups in Atlantic Canada talking about it. There was a conference on co-housing in Moncton last June, and 120 people were there to take part in this conference. So the idea is bubbling. It is something that, Maritimers, until they see it, they don't quite believe it. So we're really determined to get this first one built, and so people can see it and go, that's what it is. So co-housing sometimes gets confused with or compared with other kinds of housing, and there are some similarities with these other kinds of housing, but co-housing is distinct from all of these. So we have more information about just how it is different than these in our handout. So check it out. And we do, obviously, we value these other kinds of housing. We think Nova Scotia needs more diversity in housing. But it's important to understand how co-housing is distinct. One thing co-housing is not is a hippie commune. There's no shared economy. There's no spiritual overtones. There's no highly unconventional lifestyles. People usually laugh. There's a perfect view there. Yeah. So this short video is from Belle Terre Cohousing in British Columbia, and we thought it does a nice little synopsis of what cohousing is.
Just gonna turn the audio back on. A little light on. Perfect.
What is a home? Here are some houses. I live in this one with my family. We clean it, we plant gardens, and we take care of it. It takes up a lot of our time. Some parts of the house we use a lot. Some things in the house we use a lot. Some parts we only use some of the time. Some things we hardly ever use. When we want to visit another home, we call a friend on the phone and make a plan. Then we go to visit. We usually get in our car and drive there. It's called a playdate for kids or a party for grown-ups. Or sometimes we invite people to our house. We know some of the people in the other houses on our street, but only a few of them. We're pretty much a happy family, but we're thinking there might be a better way to live. So we've decided to try something different. We joined a co-housing community. And together with the other community members, we've decided we want our house to look like this. We're taking the parts of our houses that are only used sometimes and sharing them. We're building a big common house with a nice playroom and guest rooms and a big kitchen and a big dining room. We're also building a big workshop and a common garden. So, when we want to, we can share meals and babysitting and chores and stuff like that. So now we won't always have to drive to playdates or parties. We can just walk out our front doors. I'll just go outside to play in the playground, and there will always be someone to help in the garden or build something in the workshop. We're also deciding to include rainwater collection, solar energy, and efficient heating. We make all these decisions together, where the gardens go, how big the building should be, what materials to use, so it's less expensive because we're not paying a developer. We're actually downsizing our footprint and upsizing our community. My parents think it's a great way to live in the 21st century. Best of all, this community is on a small island called Bowen, surrounded by forest and ocean and only 20 minutes by ferry from Vancouver. This is Belle Terre. We call it home, and you can too. Join us.
So it's true, you can join them. They have a couple units available. They start at about $750,000, and but we're hoping that since you're here, you might join ours instead. Yeah, so we have a much shorter video that we've just released, and maybe you've already seen it. We thought we'd show it here, though. We're kind of proud of it. Just 30 seconds of what we have in mind.
Come home to Nova Scotia's greenest neighborhood. We're building an energy-efficient, solar-powered, walkable village at the heart of Nova Scotia's spectacular South Shore. It's easy being green when your home and neighborhood are designed that way from the ground up, leaving you time for what really matters. Maximize your lifestyle. Minimize your footprint. Join us at Treehouse Village.
It's an old town. There's a river that runs right through the middle of it, and a lot of old homes.
The project vision for Treehouse Village is a joyful, environmentally responsible, healthy, multi-age co-housing community in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. And our values are the planet, our neighbors, and ourselves. So living lightly on the earth, sharing resources and joy, and being a welcoming community to all, and living in a comfortable and a healthy home. The word eco-housing is a twist on the co-housing name. It's a mashup of eco, collaborative, and housing, which we feel were all words that describe what Treehouse Village will be. Here are the nuts and bolts of the plan, and I'll go through this, and some of these points we'll be going into some more detail about. So the plan is a neighborhood of 25 to 30 homes of various sizes. They're private homes, welcome. Private homes clustered around shared amenities such as the common house. We are envisioning a semi-detached form, so townhouses or duplexes, some wall sharing to reduce cost and increase energy efficiency, but also everyone's got a door sort of to the outside, and there's still enough space on the property to have gardens and play space. It will be located within the town boundaries of the town of Bridgewater and connected to municipal services. We're aiming for a site that's at least 5 acres in size, which would allow the type of built form that I just described. Multi-age community is a very important value for us. We are aspiring to include universal design in the design of the homes, so that not only are they accessible, but they are relatively easy to change and adapt as needs change over time, to remove or add walls as your family configuration changes, and that it's something that can really serve you for most of your life. Quality and durable construction, so not frilly, but certainly well built is important. A very high degree of energy efficiency. So we're going to aim for a net zero construction, which means that we produce as much energy as we consume to keep those energy bills as low as possible. And because of our strong environmental values that are coming into the project. We will be incorporated in the end as a condominium, which means you would own a condo, your home would be a condo, and that kind of legal framework is used by most cohousings in Canada, and it really works well legally. It allows banks give loans give mortgages for condos, and the legislation just really works well for both private space and shared amenities, which is what cohousing is. And we aim to be complete in 2021. Which is a really ambitious timeline for a cohousing community, but we're confident, given the interest we've already had, that we can get pretty close to that. I forgot to mention we have a 5-year-old son who's not with us here today, but we want to raise him in cohousing, and all of a sudden he's 5 years old, so we better get on that. So that's part of the reason we have such an ambitious timeline.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the parts of the development that people are most excited about, the homes. So what are the homes going to be like? So right out the gate, I have to say the homes have not been designed yet. Okay? So the idea is that there's going to be a community design process that's going to take place. But here are some of the principles that are already part of the project. So one important thing is that the homes will be fully equipped homes. So all of the basics that you would need to have in an independent unit would be in each home. So that includes bedrooms, bathroom, living space, and a full kitchen. Okay? The homes will be bright, highly energy efficient, comfortable, and have a high degree of accessibility, and be constructed of durable materials. So Kate and I have actually had the great pleasure of visiting a number of co-housing communities across Canada, and have taken some notes on some of the wonderful features that these communities have included in their homes, both in the private spaces as well as in the common spaces. And we've got a bunch of slides coming up that show those photos. Just from the perspective of the interior of the homes, this is not an uncommon image. This is from a co-housing, a very successful co-housing in Harborside, called Harborside Cohousing, which is in BC. As you can see, we have comfortable units. They're well equipped. They're modestly sized, so that's an important part of co-housing. So the units are on the smaller end, but they're complete. And that's what allows people then to be able to be in their own space while at the same time also enjoying high-quality common spaces. Here's another couple of shots involving a bedroom with cabinetry, window, and bathroom. So, you know, there's nothing particularly opulent in these units. The co-housings are not designed to be, you know, really high-end luxury kind of homes. They're intended to be durable and functional homes that work well for smaller spaces. So the bottom line is that these are going to be nice quality homes. They're also going to be what we call right-sized when compared to conventional housing, because one of the things that we believe is that our homes these days are overly large, right? People have come to live in homes that are larger than what they need, so there's no extraneous rooms to heat or clean. Hey, bonus. Seldom used spaces, such as guest rooms, are instead included as part of the high-quality common amenities so that those can be shared and signed out or simply used on an ongoing basis for the benefit of all the residents. So that's all I'm going to say about the private homes for now. We've got a little bit more information coming up toward the end of the presentation on sizing and costs, but I'm going to turn it over to Kate to talk about the next part.
In some co-housings, the private space also includes a little private garden. So there's usually shared gardens, but these have private patios and little gardens up front too. The common amenities are really what sets co-housing apart from a typical condo. And smart condo developers are starting to pick up on the popularity of co-housing, and so they're trying to make more common spaces in the condos. But I think co-housing still goes above and beyond what you would find in any condo, because there is so much attention paid to the common spaces. In fact, it's the common spaces that the group designs first to make sure they're super awesome, and it makes it a lot easier to make your own unit smaller when you know what you're going to have access to in terms of the shared spaces. So the common house ends up being kind of the social heart of the community. And sometimes it's attached to other units. Sometimes it's standalone. This is in Nanaimo. Their common house is in the middle, and they have units kind of going off on either side. It's a place where all residents are welcome and encouraged to spend time. It's a place where celebrations happen. You can have community potlucks there. You can also reserve it for your own private birthday party if someone in your family is having a milestone. It's a place for smaller, more informal social events like morning coffee or story time for kids. Common houses usually have there are some parts of common houses that are typical. You find them in every co-housing, and then there are other parts, other rooms and uses that are specific based on the people who live in that particular community. So I'd like to give you a bit of a visual tour of some of those spaces. So there's always a dining room. There's always a room large enough for everyone in the community to sit and enjoy a meal together. And in co-housing, communities will decide for themselves how often they want to have a shared meal. Sometimes it's a few times a month. Some communities have meals several times a week together. And the meals are always by choice. You don't have to go, but it is one of those things that really glues the community together and also provides some of that ease and convenience for families who, you might only, as an adult in a community, cook once or twice a month, but have access to several meals a week. So that's a kind of an interesting aspect of co-housing. Here's the common kitchen in the common house. Ends up being kind of the best of. So tools and kitchen gadgets and appliances that, again, you don't need in your own place, but you could have access to here in the common kitchen. There's usually some kind of living area, lounge, sitting room. This one's got a piano and a massage chair that was only partially functioning. It's kind of amusing. But an amazing view. You can't see this. Looks out onto the mountains and the water on Vancouver Island. They usually all have a great playroom for kids. So whether it's for the kids living in the community or for visiting relatives, great kid play space that's usually close to the dining room. So when kids are done eating, they can go and play, and adults can continue to have some conversations. Usually, often there's a woodworking shop where there are some shelves that are private. You know, people have their own tools that they're not up for sharing, or at least not without supervision. And then there are other tools that would be sort of tool library for anyone to use. Here's an exercise room in one of them. You almost always will find guest rooms, at least a couple of guest rooms. And again, those are, so instead of having one bedroom more than you need, you can not have a guest room and just book the guest room in the common house when you have company coming. And we've heard that those have been working really well in the co-housings that have them. Sometimes there's like home office space for remote workers or freelancers. Laundry. Every home typically has its own laundry hookup, but usually about half of the residents choose not to install their own laundry and instead use the laundry in the common house. Storage. Here's a bike room. Outdoor common spaces, garden beds, forested space as well. So when you think about the home sizes.
Can somebody come in?
Yes, absolutely. Come on in. Hello. Hi. Welcome. Come on in. Hi. I'll just let you know that there's some really great kid stuff happening through that door right there. So if you'd like to see some toys and different things like that, just through that door, see it open a crack. And that's it. And kids are welcome to come and go if you want to.
Oh, okay.
Check
That's what
it out.
we wanted to check out.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you. Sorry.
You're welcome. You can come and go as you wish. Yeah, so these are the estimated sizes. We haven't done the design yet, as Leon said, but they are modest sizes for that size of home. But the plus with co-housing is that then you've got this, you know, sometimes 3 or 4, even 4,000 square feet of high quality shared space, plus all the outdoor space as well. So it's really, when you do the math on square footage, you have to keep that in mind because it really changes the equation. So co-housing units and homes tend to be comparable to new market housing in the community or city that they're in. So that's why on Bowen Island they're $750,000 because that's what it costs to buy a new home in that market. In Bridgewater, new homes are roughly in the $200,000 to $300,000 range for a new quality home. So we can expect that the homes in this co-housing will be in that range approximately. The exact figures will be refined as we design it together and make decisions about what we want to include and exclude. We're aiming for a consistent level of finish throughout, so it's not custom design. If you are very particular about design elements in your home, co-housing is probably not going to be a satisfactory option for you. But if you're willing to work with others and take advantage of the efficiency of bulk purchasing, then co-housing can work really well to get kind of more than you might even be able to afford otherwise because we're building it together. And there's that economy of scale. Of course, it's a condo, so everything from the drywall in is yours to change. So if you choose to do betterments, you're absolutely welcome to do that. And because they're condos, they can be bought and sold on the open market. So the hope is that it becomes an investment, you can build equity in your investment, and you can sell it on the market. That's one of the main things that distinguishes co-housing from co-op housing. Yeah, and so much more than a home. So as with any home purchase, you've got to buy it. So you've got your down payment and your mortgage, or you just happen to be able to buy it outright. And yeah, comparable prices to market housing. There's also the time and effort put into the development and the maintenance of the homes. Different with co-housing to design and develop it together. Unless you're building and designing your own home, that may not be the case. But the ongoing maintenance is true for whether you own a single family home or a co-housing home. There is stuff to be done to maintain it and keep it going. But then we really want to focus your attention on the savings and benefits, and some of those are measurable. Like you're gonna be able to measure and compare your energy bills, which we're hoping could be even double digit for a year. You know, some co-housings are finding that their energy bills are under $100 for a year of energy, which is pretty amazing. I skipped one though. So access to the common amenities. It is likely that for Leon and I, we're going to have access in this co-housing to amenities and spaces that we probably wouldn't be able to afford in our own home. We certainly don't have it in our own home right now. Things like a workshop or a room that's just for kids play, that kind of thing. It makes those things more possible. Low and steady maintenance costs. So because it's a condo, we have to work together to predict and budget for the maintenance, and that means that you sort of pay a little bit at a time rather than, oh my gosh, we need a new roof, where's the 20 grand coming from? There's this opportunities for a sharing economy, which is hard to put a dollar figure on, but is I think one of the real bonuses of co-housing. So how do you put a value on not having to cook a meal every night? Or that you have somebody who is willing to alternate picking up the kid from school with you. Can you live with one less car because the co-housing is located in a place where you can walk more places, you have access to public transit. More intangibles, happier, healthier kids. There's some really great research coming out about how co-housing really creates the environment of outdoor play, of independence, fostering independence, healthy meals, growing food, all of those kind of things, and living longer. So number one predictor of death is social isolation. In the UK, they have a minister of social isolation now. It's a really big deal, and co-housing has been shown to be an antidote to that. Once we all move in together, there's work to be done, like I said, but there's lots of people to do it and to share the load. And chances are, instead of having to do everything as you would in your own home, you can maybe specialize in the things that you would prefer to spend time on. And this is just a note about how we make decisions together. So co-housings all use a participatory decision-making style, and for ours we're going to be using sociocracy, also called dynamic governance, which is a type of governance and decision-making that really empowers people and encourages participation, distributes the power and the work across the organization.
Okay, so this is all great, but it's in Bridgewater, right? Halifax folks, right? No? It's a good thing? It's a good thing? Okay, here's where I'm going to convince you that it's an incredible thing. You ready? So we live in Bridgewater. We love Bridgewater. We've lived there for about a decade, and it's an incredible community. We're not that far from Halifax, about an hour on a good day, and a little longer when it's busier. But it's quite a neat community. Little known fact, Bridgewater is actually a very progressive town. It's a community that's regaining vibrancy. There's a long history in Bridgewater of being a regional service center. So there's a lot of key amenities right in the community, and we're going to get into a few of them. Things like a hospital, community college campus. It's the center of government operations, education, healthcare, et cetera, for the whole South Shore, as well as a lot of shopping and service center amenities. But it's also been rediscovering a little bit of its soul in the past 10, 20 years. some of the really amazing initiatives that have been on the go that are coming out of a groundswell of community action and social action include the wonderful community garden program that's up. The town actually has an edible trees program, so there's planting fruit and nut trees all over the community. And there's a lot of really wonderful arts, culture, social justice, and environmental initiatives that are growing out of the community's heart. The town also is receiving national recognition for its sustainability initiatives and for its future-oriented planning, including that the town council has been one of the first communities in Eastern Canada to create a plan to get off fossil fuels completely. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that's making this quite a green and progressive place. As a result of that, it's also a very favorable place to develop a new kind of sustainable housing subdivision. There's actually been quite a few examples of these types of initiatives trying to get started in Halifax and in other cities and actually being stymied by overly conservative planning policies or costs. Bridgewater, by contrast, is actually really, really welcoming of this type of development and wants to have them take place there. It's also been recognized recently as the best town in Atlantic Canada for young families, simply because of all the incredible recreation and schooling opportunities in the area. Bridgewater is an hour from Halifax for getting stuff done, but it's also right at the epicenter of what are some really incredible natural resources all along the South Shore and inland. From beautiful beaches, this is Risser's Beach, just a 20-minute drive from Bridgewater, to Ketchmakujik National Park, and you literally only have to get in your car, drive for 5 minutes, and you're in nature. That's one of the great advantages of being in a regional town. This is an aerial view of Bridgewater. That's the LaHave River snaking through the community and just on its way out to the ocean. One of the neat things about Bridgewater is that there's also land available for development. So that's a really important thing. Most co-housings in Canada, and there's about 24 either built or in formation. One of the things that they've struggled with most is a lack of land to do their thing on. By contrast, Bridgewater has a lot of developable land left right within the heart of the community. As you can see from this aerial shot, it's also a very green community with a lot of canopy, and there's also a lot of parcels still ideally located within a 5-minute walk of the center of town. So being part of a walkable community, an accessible community, Bridgewater has only in the last year got its first municipally run public transit system up and running, so there's now a bus that runs around Bridgewater, which is giving us hope that it's also a community that we may even be able to live in without a car. There's regional transit initiatives that are beginning to connect this town to Halifax. So it's still early days for some of this transportation stuff, but it's heading in the right direction for sure. Land is also fairly affordable. And right now, our group is in negotiation with landowners in order to secure a location for our development. And we actually expect to have that nailed down within the next month to 2 months. So that'll be a major development for us. And if you join our listserv or join our community, we'll make sure that you find out about it as soon as that's known. For those who may have to relocate, or for whom relocation to the South Shore may seem a little bit daunting, we're starting to pull together information on what one can do in the Bridgewater area. From an employment perspective, there's good quality employment available right in the area. So as I mentioned, Bridgewater is the center of health services for the whole South Shore, with a major hospital, South Shore Regional Hospital, right in the community, as well as a whole bunch of continuing care, public health, and nursing programs. It's also the center of education. So there's a community college in the town, as well as the South Shore Regional School Board is based in Bridgewater. So there's a lot of schools in the area. Government services, everything from courthouse to municipal services to community services, et cetera, are all based in the Bridgewater area. There's several substantial manufacturing plants in and around the community. Bridgewater is home to one of, is it two? Three Michelin plants in Nova Scotia. So there's 1,500 jobs right in town that are based on manufacturing. They actually make parts for airplanes in Lunenburg in the large Stelia aerospace component factory. So there's all kinds of high quality and high tech manufacturing work in the area, and then associated spin-off trades. Bridgewater is also becoming a real amazing home for freelancers, remote workers, and entrepreneurs. We have our own community hub where people work independently in kind of a shared co-working space. So for those who are interested in sort of being part of the digital economy or working more remotely, there's several supports available right in the community to help people connect with those kind of resources and like-minded folks. Of course, I mentioned it's a center for retail and also professional services associated. In terms of schools, we have some wonderful schools in the area. So Bridgewater is home to an elementary school, a junior high school, and a senior high school. The junior high and the elementary are right in the heart of town, and we would aim to have our co-housing be as close as possible to that. There's also a French school, so the CSAP is a French language school just 2 minutes outside of Bridgewater, and has bus service available. Yes, it does. The Waldorf School is a wonderful independent school who have set up shop right next door to us here. That's where our son goes. The Waldorf School is a wonderful school for people who value natural child development, and we found a lot of support in our project from folks at the Waldorf School. In addition to that, there's a very strong homeschooling network all across the South Shore. There's a lot of folks homeschooling these days. And then there's the Nova Scotia Community College as well, which has a lot of trades and business training. I'm still on, aren't I? I am. What's that? Oh, move this way. Okay. So the question is, how are we now? These are all wonderful ideas. The location's great. I've convinced you all of that. The question now is, how are we going to make this happen? This sounds like a little bit of a pipe dream. Let's get practical. So, we are not the first co-housing community in Canada. There are 24 communities that have moved through this process or are in the process of it, and there's several hundred in the United States and thousands in Europe. So we know from experience what works and what doesn't work in actually having going through the process of building a community. And the most important factor that we know is that we have to work as a team, and in working as a team, we have to involve the right professionals. This is not a DIY project. This is a large development, 25, 30 homes, high quality common spaces, high quality construction. We need to work with people who understand how to get things built. However, we are not only working with folks like this architect here who's working with this other group to lay out their land and to do their physical design. So we're not only working with professionals who understand how to design a physical community, we're also working with professionals who understand how to design a social community. Okay? So that's an often underappreciated part of this work, which is what it takes to set up a healthy working relationship and a healthy structure with other people. We also know that by working with professionals, we can get it done more quickly, more cost effectively, and with quality results. And many of the problems of communities that have tried to do these things that have arisen are because they haven't involved the right professionals at the right time. So here we have, for example, architects working with the community, little massing model here, working with blocks, trying to understand how to space out the buildings and how to create kind of a more, this would be for a more urban type of co-housing community, to eventually developing site plans, of which we have access to dozens. And there's really amazing work that's been done to design these co-housing communities. For example, here's the common house on this particular property, and here are all the units in little rows. This design is actually very similar to what we're envisioning for our group, so those same principles are at play. Some covered garages and carports over here, and here's the street. Lots of green space around. So this is a kind of similar concept. As I said, many have been built, so we have a lot of examples to look at, what works, what doesn't work, and co-housing communities are typically very happy to share their development process and what they would have changed along the way. So going from the design process to construction obviously takes time, it takes work, and it takes knowledge of how to go through this. We're not going to spend any more time on this today. There's some additional information in our 3-page handouts over here, and we have information on our website as well. But planning this process is what our community is now going through. So we already have 18 member households that we're working with right now. So our target is 25 to 30. So the project is really moving along. We've had incredible uptake even just in the last few weeks. And the community is planning these things out and assembling the professional team. So here's just a short list of some of the people that we are bringing on board in order to help us with this work. Interesting fact, there's a whole field of consultants out there that help communities from the ground up plan their co-housing community, and there's actually specialist architects that do co-housing focused architecture and design. So there's a really wonderful network of professionals that we're already starting to tap into, and we're planning this out, we're budgeting this out, and making sure that we've got the right team around us. In a really quick snapshot, this is our timeline for the project. So we're looking to go from formation through land purchase. We've already formed. We're now in the process of land purchase and design. That'll be the remainder of 2019. And then moving into construction in 2020 and completing construction in 2021. So around a 2.5 year time frame from where we are now. There's probably already been a 1.5 years worth of work that's gone into this project by this stage. So we're not starting from zero, we're starting from partway up from zero. In terms of the next slide goes to Kate. What it means to join any phase, that's right. So there are advantages and disadvantages to joining our project in the different phases. So the folks who started with us in the very early stages, obviously there was still a lot of question around what's going to happen, is this going to work, what's it going to cost, etc. So there was a lot of uncertainty. On the other hand, there was a lot of opportunity for people to help really shape the whole project. Now that we're entering the middle phases here, what it means is that there's a lot more certainty in the project. We have a certain baseline that's been established. We have a certain economic model that's coming together. We have a certain number of people that we know are going to help carry the project forward. Some decisions, on the other hand, have already been made, right? So as folks join us in this process and it gets later and later and later, more and more things will have been determined. So for example, we're soon going to have land. That'll be determined. And then by the spring, we will start to move through the actual design process with an architect. And so people are still welcome to join us during those phases as long as there's space in the group. But basically, the further and further things go along, I guess the less work there is to do, but the less choice there is in what it all ends up looking like as well. So those are some of the pros and cons to joining at different phases. As I mentioned, we are already at 18 households at this time, so, and I think Kay will say a little bit more about that in a moment. In our handout, there is a little bit more information too on some of the pros and cons of joining soon versus joining later.
So a couple of our 18 households are here right now. Do you want to give a little wave? So Bryn up there and Jeremy are a couple of our current member households. And yeah, so most of the 18 households have been, we've been meeting as a group, building our group since October. And we've laid a pretty solid foundation and are in a time now where we really want to see if we can up our membership to really include as many people as possible in the design that's coming up. And learning from other co-housings, we have designed a way for people to come on board in a way that allows people to invest incrementally as they become more certain that this is something they want to become a part of. So it starts with low cost and low risk, and as you step forward, the cost increases, the commitment increases, and your say in the project also increases. The first step in becoming a member is to attend an info session, so you're all here now, you're all guests, which means you can attend any of our meetings as a guest, observe, rather than participate, but you get to come and kind of meet us and see what we're doing. Or if you're pretty sure, you think, okay, I think I'm ready to take the next step, associate member, you can do the prospective member questionnaire. So that's just an online form. You can find it on our website, and that just gives you a chance to tell us your name and your email, how we can reach you, and you can indicate there your level of interest in moving forward, and based on that, we'll get in touch with you about what the next steps would be. Then you become oriented. We'll give you a quick study on how we make decisions together, what our community agreements are, so that you can show up at a meeting and start participating fully. When you become an associate member, you can do a lot. You can come to the meetings, you get to participate in most decisions, and you really get to test it out for a period of 3 months. So it's being a guest is free. An associate membership ranges between $75 and $150 for 3 months. And so yeah, low cost, but also low risk to come test it out. And then if you're ready to become serious, then you can become an equity member. Now, equity membership will open in March, and that's the time when equity members are shareholders in the development company. So that's serious commitment and a chance to be involved with all of the decisions in the project. So in order to...
Can I just ask, what is the cost of the equity?
Yeah, great question. So equity memberships is going to start at $1,000 in March, and it will increase from there based on the costs needed, like the costs that the project's incurring. So everything from architect and designer fees, consultant fees, land purchase, all those things. As those costs rise, equity membership will actually increase over time. And at each call for a higher amount, anyone who's currently a member needs to ante up to that amount, and anybody who's joining at that time just pays whatever that call level is at that time. All of your contributions during equity membership is part of your down payment. So there is, that's a difference between typical housing where you sort of pay all your down payment up front. In co-housing, your down payment kind of comes in pieces over the development of the project.
And goes to no more than 20%.
Yeah, it goes to no more than 20% of your home cost. I don't think I put a slide in for that. I didn't. Well, it's okay. So in order to achieve our project's multi-age vision, which I talked about earlier, it's in both our vision and our core values around having a community that is a diversity of ages, our membership decided back in December to split ourselves into 30 spots, and to split those 30 spots evenly into two groups, Groups A and Group B. And Group A is all households who have an adult under 40, or who have, hello, would you like to come in? So Group A would be, just double check here. Hello, would you like to come in?
She wants to, but she got her stroller, but she can park it on the side.
Bring it right in, there's already another stroller in here. Yeah.
Take it right in with you.
Great.
There you go.
Marianne's a great greeter for us.
All right.
Come on in. Hi, there's space to park a stroller back here.
Okay.
Through through that there's a whole bunch of fun kids activities, and you can come and go between the two as you like. So yeah, two groups. So we've got group A, which is households with someone under 40, with an adult under 40, or households that will have minor children living at home at the time we move in 2021. So that's group A. Group B is everyone else, all other households. And at this moment, group B is full. And we are keeping a waiting list for people who are in group B who are interested in the project. It's not a very long list right now because we just filled last week. And we will keep track of the wait list based on the date that you complete the prospective member questionnaire. So if you'd like to get on the wait list, or if you're in group A, everyone who thinks they might be interested should really do the prospective member questionnaire, because that's what we use to sort of timestamp your interest in the project. It is hard for us to say, but since we're so early in the project, we do expect some turnover, but we really have no way of knowing what to expect with that. But like I say, we're pretty early and the wait list is pretty short at this point. So,
I have a question, just like, I'm jumping ahead maybe 10 years, but if you can resell your unit, how are you going to ensure that you still maintain that mix of generations?
Yeah, great question. So when it comes to after we move in and if somebody wants to sell their home, you can't discriminate based on age. And but what typically happens in co-housing is that there's sort of there's an agreement among residents that the community gets the first chance to try to sell that home. So maybe they're given 2 months to try to sell it the best they can, and if it doesn't happen, then the seller is free to use a realtor, whomever they wish to sell their home. So in that sense, there's a real effort by the community to try to make sure that incoming residents, it's not so much restrictions as just educating prospective residents on what is this. And the better a job that a community does on what their community is, the more likely the match is to be a good one. But yeah, that's a great question.
And who the community reaches out to, right? Because you may not be able to restrict who comes in, but you can certainly focus who you're marketing that particular home to.
I imagine you probably still have an ongoing group of people who are waiting.
You know what? Some co-housing communities in Canada have quite long wait lists to get in.
So
There's a hand.
there's a hand up. Yes.
So when you divide into group A and group B, how do you respond to people who say that's a form of age discrimination?
Yeah, great question. So we talked to the Human Rights Commission in Nova Scotia, and the Act doesn't apply until we actually sell homes. And so at this point, we are selling an idea. It's membership to a club. Equity membership hasn't opened, and so the Act doesn't apply to us at this stage in the development. So we're working with a third lawyer, a human rights lawyer, to make sure we define very clearly what that point is. Yeah.
And up to this, maybe that I'm getting ahead of the game. Up to this point, I haven't seen any discussions about, and maybe this becomes part of the philosophical basis of your, which was what did you call this?
Sociocracy? Yes.
It's interesting, but I mean, what about all other forms of discrimination, gender discrimination, sexual orientation, and so on? I mean, are you going to have a philosophical underpinning around that kind of openness?
Yeah. So in our core values, it says welcoming to all. So the aim is to try to be as welcoming as possible to everyone. I think there are, for instance, price-wise, this type of home is not affordable to everyone. So, for instance, there will not be the economic diversity that one might hope for in a diverse housing community. And this is where co-housing is not sort of the silver bullet housing solution for everybody. It's for a certain slice of the market, and and so that's what that's what it will be. But there is certainly an intention among members to be as welcoming as possible. And with sociocracy, there are some tools around inclusion and equal participation.
Yeah. So maybe I can add just one more point. So I think your question was also about we're dividing the membership based on age, or are we dividing the membership based on any other characteristics that are important to us?
Yeah.
At this time, because it's specifically part of the vision of the community is that it's a multi-age community, the only way to create that is by setting up some rules around age at this stage of the process. That is the only way. One of the things that we started, the reason that we created the 2 pools of members was actually because we were filling up incredibly rapidly with people over the age of 50. And if we did not slow that process down, we would be a community with almost all folks over the age of 50. So it was the community that decided to slow that down and say, how do we create more age diversity? It's actually an affirmative action to say we also want co-housing to be accessible to people who are younger, because it's not going to happen if we just allow this train to continue. Like it's possible that we would be full within a month, and that there would be very few younger Nova Scotians in that mix. So it's a very tricky thing. Many intentional communities struggle with that challenge of how do you create some healthy diversity without falling into discrimination. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your economic overview of Bridgewater, you mean the reality is that something like this is going to appeal to people who are post-work retirement. People are heading towards retirement because they have an independent source of income.
Yeah.
I mean, you are dealing with, that is a pressure that you're dealing with, is that in a place like Bridgewater, and with an economic strata that you're dealing with people, a higher percentage of people with independent income.
Yeah. And yet we still have a lot of young families who need quality housing.
Of course, yeah.
And may simply be slower to enter our process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes?
I'm not sure if I've spaced out, but so the breakdown between the 2 groups, could you say what that is again?
Sure. So Group A, so there are 30 membership spots. Equally divided between Group A and Group B. Group A is any household with an adult under 40 or that has child or children living at home in 2021, which is our anticipated move-in. And Group B is everyone else, all other households.
And Group B is the one that's full right now.
Group B is full right now.
Thank you.
So, unless you are certain that this is not for you, we would encourage you to go and do the short little prospective member questionnaire. When you get home, it's on the computer, it's pretty straightforward, and based on that, then we'll get in touch with you about how to move forward. If you're in Group B, we'll let you know that you're on the wait list and kind of what happens if a spot becomes available. If you're in Group A, we will let you know what your next step options are to become an associate member. One of the steps to becoming an associate member is to get oriented, as I mentioned, sort of, have a quick study on how we make decisions and how to join the group. We're going to do a session actually in Halifax, so most of that will be happening more in Bridgewater, but we really want to make it easy for folks in Halifax. So in 2 weeks, on February the 17th, from 2 to 4 at the Ecology Action Center, we are going to be holding an orientation session. So that's for people who have done this survey, done the questionnaire, and want to become an associate member. And so that's kind of a real quick way to get to this point for Group A households. And there will be other opportunities if you're not ready for that, or if that date doesn't work for you, then we can work something out. But that is a possibility at this moment. So that closes our formal presentation, and we would like before we go to questions, just because folks may want to stay for all the questions, or maybe you want to take off partway through. So before we start taking questions, we would like to say thank you to the Museum of Natural History for the space. They say thank you to the Waldorf School next door, who offered this great opportunity for kids to play while adults could focus here. We want to say thank you to you, obviously, for coming and being curious today. And also, if there's somebody you wish could have been here to hear this today, we are going to be in Dartmouth tomorrow, 2 to 4 at Shuby Park at the Fairbanks Center. And so you're welcome to nudge someone who you think would appreciate hearing about this presentation to come tomorrow. So yeah,
and there will be children's activities as well.
Yeah, we've got the Adventure Earth Center tomorrow offering nature activities for kids. So it's a sort of a 2-in-1 again. So now we're going to just open things up for questions, and if you need to go, or if you want to go and talk more to the Waldorf School folks, then we'll do that. We'll flick the light on and take some questions. Okay. Welcome. You grab whatever you wish on your way out.
Yeah. So we have this room till 4, and we're happy to just open it right up for conversation and questions. And I see there's questions in the front.
The next meeting, if you know your group B or group A is selected, which one is which. Do you think we should still attend?
The orientation, we're on the wait list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd be welcome to attend. It's kind of how much you want to invest at this point with the uncertainty, but you're more than welcome to be there. Any questions?
No, I wouldn't imagine.
Over here.
Yeah. Question?
Mingle
Yes.
around us.
Thanks very much for your presentation. I think it's safe to say that Kevin and I are both very interested in being in that group A. We just have a few questions around finances and what it would take to help people in that group A with modest finances join in on a housing project such as this. We have been looking at options for purchasing homes, and we decided recently to continue renting for a little while because the market's just not accessible for us in Halifax at the moment. And even then, we would be looking at, say, $100,000 as a starter home. So we just want to know whether there's any kind of stratification within the cohousing project to allow younger families or people with lower incomes to access this kind of community.
I'm also curious to follow on. Is there any? I understand that you can't nail down what this will cost because that will transpire as you go through the process. But I'm wondering if there's any guarantee you can offer of what the maximum house price will ever reach, because it would be such a shame to invest time and money and then for the ultimate project, like the end product, to be more expensive than we could afford, if you see what I mean. So is there any plan to guarantee like a cut-off for how expensive the project will get? Does that make sense?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You want to go first?
Yeah, and very important questions, and questions that we don't have good answers to at this point. Affordability is something that we've struggled to reconcile with the project. I think that we have a big problem in our in our country with people breaking into the housing market, especially in urban areas. And the housing crisis that we've projected for this project, you know, in the 200 to 300 range, with closer to 2 for a smaller unit and closer to 3 for a bigger unit, right? So there's a spread within the units. The way that we arrived at that is by looking at what is the pattern for other co-housing communities in Canada that are based on a condominium model, right? So, you know, this project is trying to do what you might call traditional co-housing, right? So there's no like alternative ownership or investment structure that's built into what we've designed and what we've brought our members in on at this point. So to say to you that with any confidence that we can sell you a unit for $100,000 would simply be disingenuous on our part. I mean, we just can't. The costs, we're developing what's called a pro forma, which is sort of a developer's language around mapping out all the costs, right? Permitting, construction per square foot, the type and quality of materials that we would be aiming for, and all of that is currently pointing us into that range. So it's looking at existing housing and the pattern of co-housing, as well as studying pricing in our area. Some co-housing communities allow a rental model for some of their units, or in certain cases there may be somebody who walks through the development process with the group who plans on buying a unit but doesn't actually plan on living there right away, and so in that case would rent out their unit for a period of months or years, or whatever their plan is. So we do see that taking place in other co-housing communities, but in terms of actually having a formal sort of affordability frame, we don't have a way to do that at this time. Yeah.
And part of that is that there are no government programs to support co-housing right now. So unlike a place like Denmark, where co-housing started, the government has stipulated 10% of all new homes have to be co-housing. And they're putting their money where their mouth is, which is amazing. And so it's possible there's a lot of economic diversity living in co-housing. In Canada, other than maybe a little tiny bit of seed funding to do a feasibility study, there's really not money for co-housing from the government, which means that all the money to build it, the $7 or so million, have to come from the members and whatever loans we can get from the bank based on our members' financing ability, right? So that's where all the money comes from. The units cost what they actually cost. There's no developer cut, there's no profit. There's no money going to members for all the hard work we put in at this point. It is at cost in the end, and you know, we're open to hearing if the government changes and all of a sudden there's money available. Certainly that's something we'll jump on. But right now, it really seems like what we've learned from other co-housings is that like the money has to come from the members, and so that so if a unit were to be subsidized, say, the subsidy would have to come from other members in the project or from like friends and family, basically. So those are kind of the options right now, and it does make it limiting. And so I think what we found helpful, because we are also relatively young and is getting really good financial advice has been a game changer for us. I don't think we would have thought that we could afford this, honestly, ourselves, until we had a financial advisor look at our everything and say, oh, actually, here's where all of that can come from. And I've talked to some of our other Group A members in the project, and I think they've had similar experiences of getting advice from someone you trust on what really is your max. Somebody different than a bank, maybe. The credit union's got a new program where they're working on financial literacy. They may have some free services, but that's been helpful for us to really understand clearly what actually is our max. And also, as we understand more about the project, like have a location, that's going to be a game changer, because people can say like, oh, well, because it's there, I only need one car in our household rather than two, or no cars maybe. So things like that can all come into the equation, but it's something that we're very aware of, and we understand that it is a barrier, and so yeah, I'd be happy to chat more with individuals about what might make it possible, or where you see the bottlenecks being in the project, whether it's the down payment part or it's the mortgage part. Happy to chat more.
And if any decisions were to be made, it would have to be made by our whole group, right? That would be a whole group decision to change, the economic model around how the units are priced, or where the money comes from and things like that. We simply can't say yes, we'll do it at this point, because that's a group decision. It affects everybody's finances. Yeah, but it's a great question. It's something that we're terribly, terribly sensitive to, because we know how big of a problem housing is in this province, and at the same time, what we need is more types of housing models out there that also make housing more affordable. The type of affordability we're going for in this project is around durability, bulk buying, and long-term low-cost maintenance and energy saving. That's the form of affordability we're working on. Doesn't help with the upfront cost, unfortunately. So it's very important to us as well.
Have you explored the possibility, I don't know, I'm sure you have, you've obviously thought this was good, but the idea of collective financing? Is there any kind of clout that you have with the bank, or mortgage brokers or lenders, that because you have a significant number of people that are collectively buying in cooperative housing, whether there's a way to pool resources that way in terms of loans? Is there a model? Is there a working model for this in other co-housing?
Well, so we're actually already able to achieve somewhere around 80% loans for this project, which is very high, because of the development process that we're going through. So we all only need to put 20% down. The rest can all be financed. So we're already doing really well on the loan end. It really gets into, can we have the next question is actually, can multiple people own one unit, and would they be willing to carry that cost? That's really what it's more about, to truly bring down the price of the units. What we've seen is that there's really not any examples in Canada of co-housings that have successfully done that. It does make the ownership model and the math very complex. Yeah. That's been our challenge. We don't, if there was a really good model that we knew and that was tested somewhere, we're already doing a lot of firsts in this province with this project. We don't want to do too many more firsts. But we're very, very, there's actually, we're in touch with people who are starting like community land trusts, for example, and community land trusts are an incredible vehicle to take speculation out of housing. There's a couple of community land trusts that are in formation right now. And what we're doing is we're connecting people with other housing types that may be a good fit for them. So that's our commitment, is to do some coalition work around people who are doing new things around housing.
Was there a question up there?
Yeah, just to add to the comment about finances. For Yvonne and I, definitely the biggest hurdle would be coming up with 20% in the first few years, because that's more than my net worth. Which, again, reaching out to family and hopefully not selling my firstborn, considering I only have one. But
oh no.
That would definitely be the biggest.
Classic co-housing is a form of home ownership, right? And so there's the basic mechanics of being able to be in the market for a home, and that's just the model we're working with at this time. Yeah, but as Kate said, we really didn't think we could afford this project until we got some really sound financial advice. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
With Group A and Group B, is Group B solely smaller units and Group A are the larger units for family development?
You want to take that?
Yeah. No, and it hasn't really been decided yet. So when our membership is, when we get to the design phase and figuring out what are the unit configurations going to be, we're going to kind of look at the membership and sort of see like what is the ratio of 1 to 2 to 3 bedroom units. So there's no prescription right now on what sizes go with each group.
But what is established is at the time that people become equity members, they enter a priority listing. And so units will be allocated, chosen, based on the priority that people join. And that's just a small perk for people to join sooner. Yeah. But the idea is that we will build the number and configuration of units that matches our community going in.
More of a statement of a question. I do just want to bring it back to the treehouse briefly, and I guess it is also a question. Like, I just want to make sure that like larger, sort of like useful spirited people can climb into and play in the treehouse that building.
Like, can adults go in the treehouse?
Yeah.
I think I have the feeling that there will be multiple tree houses. Yeah.
Do you want to be on the treehouse design team?
I mean, yes. I don't know if that's that because we haven't done that yet, right?
We haven't done it yet.
Okay.
But you can lead it up.
You will be the first. You will be the first to know.
Yeah.
Did you see how Kate gave power to Bryn in that conversation? That's how this works. Yes, you can design it. Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious, this is just like a theoretical question that you may be unable to answer. But when you were talking about the pros of living in Bridgewater and about some of the community initiatives that are already in place there, I wonder whether is there any intention for this project to add to the wider Bridgewater community? For example, if you end up having a tool library, would you only allow access to people who are like owners in your model, or would you be planning to make that something that was accessible by the wider community as well? Like if you have outside playgrounds, will they be like just for you, or would you let other people use them also?
Yeah, great question. We don't know yet. So that's the kind of decision that would be made by the members. Usually the process is like the group forms, the group designs the housing development together, and then the group does its policy formation together. So that all those policies are like, around pets and around outdoor play and around, how we want to interact with the outside community, the neighborhood that we're in. And so, it's hard to say, but what we could say, based on the members who are a part of the project so far, is that there is an intention to be, like if gated communities on this end, it's like the other side of that, right? Like how can we be integrated? How can we be neighborly, not just with the people in the housing development, but our larger neighborhood?
Yeah.
So it's hard to know exactly, but I think the spirit is there.
Yeah.
That's a lot to chew on, hey?
So how have you come up with the number of houses? Is that just based on the land that you
25 to 30.
You can purchase and the size of the lot you
25
have?
to 30, yeah.
How do you?
And how did we come up with that? So that is kind of a sweet spot for co-housing. So if you look at all the hundreds that exist in North America, they tend to be, well, there's a big range, like I think as few as like 8 units up to 50 or something, but there's a sweet spot, sort of mid-20s to mid-30s, that gives you a really good economy of scale in terms of maximizing the affordability, but also the number of adults, number of people in that community is a number that you can actually like get to know that number. If you get into 40, 50, 60 units, it starts to become, the social fabric can suffer. And it can also suffer if it's too small. I don't know if you've ever lived in a house with 6 roommates, or right now we actually live in a condo of 13 units. It's not enough. It's too much work. There's too much burden on each of those households. So that's kind of the sweet spot, and that's why we're choosing that number. Is again, we're trying to take the best practices from elsewhere and do it.
Would you ever have considered one of the units as being sort of apartment-like to accommodate
there are a few examples that we can draw on where communities that have integrated a rental unit, sometimes it's not by choice, it's because they got saddled with a unit they couldn't sell at the end, or several in some cases where projects are not well managed. So that's stressful on those communities. We've learned a lot from one particular community that had a lot of things go sideways, but they've been very open with us about what they learned. It's been really helpful. So again, it's like who pays for that rental unit to get built is one question, and then the other question is who's the landlord for that unit, and how does that affect the social dynamics and the power dynamics in the community? So we have heard, we're still searching for an example where that's worked well, that power dynamic, where the community is the landlord for a tenant. The examples we found have tended to not be very positive. And because the community is built upon participatory, equal power governance, it's been a challenge. So yeah, we're still searching for best practice there.
And I guess it's also tricky when you have people that have invested longer term versus people that are just maybe renting shorter term. It's hard to necessarily mesh those same values and commitment to the actual community, I guess.
That's exactly what we've heard. Yeah. So people are there with sort of different interest levels or different commitment levels to the community, but also that there's sort of this management thing that starts to happen where the owners, they feel like the managers of the tenants, and it's just because it's a structural power dynamic. It's really hard to decouple that in a clean and healthy way. Again, we're open to models where it's worked, but we haven't seen one yet. Flying through. I love it.
How about alternative energy practices? Are you gonna, in terms of on the grid, off the grid energy sources, community involvement in solar energy and windmills or whatever alternatives? But do you have a plan or a vision in place?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So so full disclosure, I'm actually an energy planner. So there's already some work. There's some work that's already gone into that. And what we've already done is we've also contracted with a designer who designs what's called net zero housing. And so there's a number of sort of building practices that you need to build right from the get-go in order to achieve highly energy efficient homes. Basically, it's already possible to build to what's called the passive house standard or the net zero ready standard for only a small additional cost above regular construction cost. There's already the practices already exist to do that. Just not a lot of people are doing it yet. And then on top of that, we would put solar panels in order to feed in electricity and hot water into the community. So between the highly energy efficient units and the solar coming in, we would produce all of our own power. And that's well within the realm of possibility. Yeah.
So
Whether we hit net zero exactly, I mean, it may end up becoming a bit of an economic equation at some point, but the intention is to get very close, if not hit it or exceed it.
And is that individual solar panels per unit, or are you going to have a solar, like a large solar panel on that somewhere on the property?
So the housing's energy system hasn't been designed yet. Both are possible. You can gain some economy of scale by having some integrated systems. For example, a hot water system that feeds through. So if we do the built form that we're looking at is sort of row house, triplex, quadplex, like some clustered units. It probably makes more sense to do one hot water system per building, right? So that we could say have that in the floor or whatever, and then to supplement whatever the meter is with the solar, because the solar has to feed into a meter, the solar PV. And so the question, but people don't need their own individual meters anymore, because right now you have enough technology that you could put sub-meters in a building. So you could just have one meter on the property, right? And then a really good sub-metering system, and everybody knows exactly what they owe. These things are really easy these days. And our main intention is to give Nova Scotia Power as little of our money as possible. And our second intention is just to have a system that just works. Yeah. And yeah, it's very, very feasible these days.
Babies are very strong.
And it may not just include baby power. It may not just be rooftop solar either. We may do some ground-mounted solar next to the buildings, have a solar array, whatever the site will allow, and however the best way is to get that energy in. Yeah, battery storage is a likely combination as well, so that we can island the community in case there's a power outage or whatever. So these things are all becoming very affordable if you have the long-term view. Yeah.
I dropped in just to grab your pamphlet. Can I do that?
Absolutely. Please come on in.
Okay, you just pretend I didn't come in.
There's some business cards with our website, and then a handout.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left. Happy to take any last questions.
Maybe we'll, we're around, so we'll maybe end the formal session there and then come on up and talk to us if you have specific questions. I'll just remind you again that the mailing list, if you're not on our email list, that is a good way to stay tuned with developments. So that list is, sign up is here if you're not on it. There's the info handout, FAQs, business cards, and then the Lunenburg County magazines, which are all take-homes for you today if you wish. And thank you again for
Thank you so much.
Thank you.